NFL fans, and welcome back to NFLUKOPS. We have got a great show for you today. We discuss Thursday night football, fighting in New Orleans, and take a look at last week's comeback stories. Also, we have some highlights of our interview this week with the amazing Phoebe Schecter, who tells us about her time coaching with the Buffalo Bills. And Mr. Irrelevant talks Jimmy G and gives us some fashion tips. But as always, remember to hit that like button like Henry and spike that subscribe button like Gronk. So here's the NFL Weekly Roundup. The Browns drowned their sorrows after last week's collapse against the Jets with a win over their division rivals, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Browns leaned heavily on the running game with Chubb, but Jacoby Brissett was also able to regularly find Njoku and Cooper to keep the chains moving. The Steelers' offense stalled yet again in the second half of the game, which left fans thinking maybe that depth chart needs another cut and paste job. And our highlight of the game was, did you see George Pickens bend over backwards to snag that ball one-handed? Wow. It was like he was channeling his inner OBJ and Neo all at once. Is that the greatest catch that you've ever seen? Let us know down in the comments if you think you know one better.
Let's get ready to rumble!
It all kicked off between the Bucs and the Saints last week. Somebody caused one hell of a brawl, but what we want to know is,
who did it?
Was it suspect number one, Bruce Arians, who was wandering around the sideline like he'd forgotten that Brady got him fired months ago?
Who did it?
Or was it suspect number two, Tom Brady, who was whining and moaning about not getting his usual protection from the referees?
Who did it?
Or was it suspect number three, Marshall Lattimore, a constant thorn in the Bucs' side and never shy of a word or two?
Who did it?
Or suspect number four, Mike Evans, who was more than happy to get out his frustration with a charging body slam?
Who did it?
Or finally, was it suspect number five, Leonard Fournette, who definitely threw the first handbag?
Who did it?
In NFLUKOPS' opinion, it was definitely Mike Evans. He certainly got history of this behaviour, as seen in Exhibit A, B, C, and D. A spare thought for Tom Brady's tablet, which is now on season-ending IR after being spiked. Rumour has it was actually nothing to do with the game. It was actually Brady's disappointment in the new Disney Plus Star Wars series. And finally, last week saw three major fourth quarter comebacks. It was Tua time against the Ravens, and although it was an amazing comeback, it must be noted that on more than one occasion Tua was underthrowing his receivers. It was Madden Magic for Kyler Murray as he went full human joystick to lead the Cardinals back in the fourth quarter against the Raiders. And old man Flacco rolled back the years to bring the Jets back against the Browns. And that was this week in the NFL. This week, we were honoured to speak to former Team GB captain, who also coached with the Buffalo Bills in the NFL, Phoebe Schecter. Here, the Sky Sports presenter tells what life was like working with the Bills. Moving on to your time, obviously, in the NFL. So how did the whole Buffalo Bills internship start?
Yeah, so it really happened, actually. USA Football used to host something called the Women's World Football Games. And it's pretty much like a 5-day camp for women from all over the world to come together, play football, get better games. And then they started collaborating with the NFL, who said, hey, let's turn this into a careers forum as well. So we'd have a panel and you'd be able to ask these amazing people like any question. They were really open and transparent. But we had people like Scott Pioli and Kim Pagula, Ron Rivera, Dean Blandino. I mean, like these amazing top level people in the NFL who were just coming out to talk to a room of what started as 200 women. It's now a very quite exclusive program where you have to apply or be, get references, and it's open to only 50 women a year now. And so that is really how I got my foot in the door and got a much better understanding of where I wanted to get to. And I remember at that forum, they just talked to everybody and they did a random interview and they said, where do you want to be in a year from now? And you're kind of running on the adrenaline of the whole event. And I remember saying, I want to be a positional coach in the NFL. And literally it was about like a year and a couple months later, I had applied for the Bill Walsh Diversity Fellowship, which is just an open application, and got a role, crazy enough, with the Buffalo Bills through a rather rigorous interview process.
Could you tell us a bit about that sort of process you had to go through to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So back then, I don't think you have to choose your teams anymore. But back then, you had to choose 5 teams that you'd be interested in participating with or interning with. So I chose my 5 teams. It was Atlanta Falcons, Buffalo Bills, the Jags. I felt there was a UK tie there, the Panthers, and the Rams. I think the Jags and the Rams never said anything. The Panthers said no. I was in talks with the Falcons because Scott Pioli has been one of my mentors pretty much since that careers forum. And I hadn't really heard anything from Buffalo. And I remember I was in the New York NFL office meeting with Scott Pioli and pretty much putting my name on the line essentially with them. And I had an email from Coach McDermott whilst I was in this meeting saying, can you get on a call in 10 minutes? I'm literally not even joking when I say I'm running through the streets of New York, have to get a taxi because you can't hear anything. End up in this taxi on the phone with Coach McDermott. I'm on speakerphone. Everyone's in the room. And he goes, are you speaking with anybody else? And I wanted to be really transparent. At this point, I had done, I think, 3 different interviews with people within his organization. Just they were trying to get a feel for what my understanding was and what my base knowledge was, which was really nothing, if I'm being honest, at that time, very minimal. And I said, yes, I'm speaking with Scott Pioli. And he goes, oh, right. Well, tell Scott, thank you, but you're going to be a Bill now. And that was it. And I was like, oh, my heart, just everything that I wanted to be a part of. And it was pretty much that year, 2017, I went to training camp with them. And yeah, it really changed my life.
And so did you get put as you ended up working obviously with the tight ends? Did you choose that, or did you get a choice in that, or did you sort of get pushed in that direction?
So my first training camp, every year I've always wanted to apply with linebackers. And my first training camp, I ended up with DBs, which was really cool because that was, I had Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer. It was Tre'Davious White's. He was a rookie. So spending time with him and those guys. And then my following year, I stayed in contact with them. Again, still wanted to be at linebackers. And they're like, no, you know what? I think we're going to put you with tight ends. So then I was with, Charles Clay, Logan Thomas, Jason Kroom, Tyler Croft, like all these amazing humans. And I stayed with them, and it was really cool because their tight ends coach, Rob Boris, he had never had an intern before in the 13 years in the league. So the learning that I had to do just from being around someone that's so used to doing everything for themselves, it really made me so much better because I constantly had to think 5 steps ahead of him because otherwise he would just do it himself. But it was the best experience ever.
And how were you, obviously as a woman, as a female coach, how were you received by the players and the staff there?
You know what? Buffalo are such a forward-thinking and progressive organization. And I think that messaging really has to come from the top down. I mean, besides the fact that you've got a female owner in Kim Pegula, whose daughter is a professional tennis player, and Jessica Pegula, and then Coach McDermott, he's got 2 daughters. All of this really does play a role into the culture that's being created. And the guys were great. The players were great. I remember there was only one time ever, and it was my first ever training camp. And I was doing personnel groupings on the sideline. And I'm kicking myself because I can't remember who it was, but it was one of the linebackers that had been around the league for a very long time. And I remember stepping back to get out of the way of a play. And I stood on his toes. And he was like, oh, I'm sorry, baby. And then I looked and he was like, I am so sorry. I did not mean that. But genuinely, I think he'd never had a female around football. I think he just probably associated females for different environments. And, and he was so apologetic. And that was literally the only time, but I think that's also very much so, it's how you present yourself. And for me, I was always going to present myself as someone who's a professional. I'm there to be a quality coach, no matter what my gender is.
That's fantastic. And talking about what was a day in the life of a coach like? So if you could, because obviously we don't, apart from Hard Knocks and things like that, we don't really get to see too much. So what was sort of a day like as being a coach?
Yeah, so the day is mad, if I'm being honest with you. Lucky enough, I lived with one of the athletic trainers, which I loved because she was a female. So that was my 5 minutes of being around a girl per day, which I always look forward to. So we'd have our 5-minute drive in together. We'd get to the facilities for 4:45 or about 5. Sometimes if I had 20 minutes, I'd try and get a gym session in nice and early, be ready to set for the day. First meetings, we go meet with the players first. So I get my breakfast, all that. We'd meet with the players at 6. We'd have an offensive staff meeting at 6:15. We'd go then meet again with the players at 6:45 is a more, a proper meeting then. 7:15 was into team meeting. Everybody was there. Then from team, you'd go into special teams, offense, and defense. So special teams, everyone, then offense and defense, then into your positional groups from there. Then we would go into walkthroughs. So this is probably about 10:15, 10:30. You go into walkthroughs. Everyone runs, grabs a snack. Guys get changed. Then we go into full practice. You do your practice for 2 hours. As practice ends, I'm running inside, getting the script basically printed from our practice so that we can all watch film whilst we eat our lunch together as a staff. So that's pretty much 1:45, you're doing that. Watch the film as a staff so that you can then go grade your guys, go right into positional meetings with your players. Then you build up again into offense and defense and special teams. And then that pretty much takes you until about 5 p.m. And then you start breaking down your whatever day of the week it is. So let's say we're Tuesday, that might be 2-minute and red zone and 4-minute, or you might be breaking down blitzes. And then you'd have a big staff meeting at 5:30, and then you'd continue the night probably until 11:30, breaking down film. We had a couple times where we were there until 2 a.m., 2:30 a.m., and then you're back in again at 4:45. So it's madness, basically.
More for Phoebe later. And it's Mr. Irrelevant.
Okay, so Jimmy Garoppolo took a pay cut from $24 million to $6.5 million to stay with the 49ers for another year as QB2. But now Wonder Boy Trey Lance has been injured and he's out for the season. So Jimmy is now QB1 for the rest of the season on $6.5 million. Seems a bit harsh. I know he's got incentives, like if he leads the team to a winning game, he gets $350,000. But all the incentives max out at about $15 million, which still is a long way short of the $24 million that he was originally getting. Now, maybe I shouldn't worry about Jimmy, because he can always subsidise his income by getting a job as a model in the Sears catalogue, looking into the middle distance or holding a frisbee. And while we're talking about fashion, I've just got to say, Cam Newton, you look very cool. Antonio Brown, definitely not cool. As a white Englishman, even I know that is not cool. Now, if we're putting a positive spin on things, this is a chance for Jimmy to showcase his talent and get an amazing job next year. The problem is, he's a little bit prone to injury. And if he's injured, then he doesn't play. And if he doesn't play, then he's back down to his $6.5 million, which still seems quite a lot of money, doesn't it? But compared to $24 million, it's nowhere near. It's a shame, really, because the 49ers are looking really good this year. But with Trey out, and then if Jimmy gets injured, then we're looking at you, Purdy. This could be your year. Back to you, Chris Collinsworth.
And now Phoebe shares her thoughts on the current NFL season. And talking on the lines of the Dolphins, do you believe in Tua?
Oh man. I don't know. I'm not fully sold on him yet, if I'm being honest. I think his first game I was not really impressed. I don't love his throwing style. I after the first game, I already had people coming messaging me saying, "You're such a Tua hater." It's not that. I think we look at the different quarterbacks that we have in the league right now, and they are so elite that when you don't have a quarterback who perhaps matches that level at the time, and I know I'm going to get the Tua hater line because I saw him last weekend, right? We saw the history essentially he was making, but he was still underthrowing his guys. You know, Tyreek Hill's having to wait for the ball, and he's someone that works so much on timing that if he doesn't just get that ball right away and get it downfield, it really throws off the whole play. So I think I want to see more of him. I don't want to have that judgment call now, you know, because I feel tight on him. Like, he's had years of people waiting for him to blossom, and can he do what he did last Sunday again this Sunday? I don't know.
I think a lot of fans are feeling the same. I mean, we spoke to Big E, Miami Dolphins 2 fan at the start of the season, and he himself said he was sat on the fence still. Obviously, he wants the Dolphins to win. He wasn't completely sold on Tua, but obviously having the weapons that they've got now could cover up, you know, the slight weaknesses that Tua does have.
Yeah, and that's what you want, right? Like, you want him to be able to, you know, he's being protected. He's not really being overly threatened in the pocket. If you can continue to create an environment where he's able to get that ball out and get it out on time and give his receivers opportunities to, you know, catch the ball with yards after catch and mix in a bit of that run game because, you know, we still have a brilliant running back. I just think that if you start playing defenses that know that that's what he's going to do, which a good defensive coordinator will know and the players will study, like, will he be exposed a little bit? You know, the Ravens defense, they were a bit banged up and they didn't really look like they're on the same page a couple times. You know, go against a really quality defense like, you know, look at like 49ers defense. They're firing all cylinders. Or, hate to say it, the Bills defense, like, you know, those guys have a pretty good finger on what's going on. And I just don't know if it's the same result if it was against a different team.
We'll find out this Sunday.
I know. Watch the Dolphins win. I'll be like, yo, I'm so sorry. I don't know anything.
And so, talking about the NFL this season then, which teams do you fancy as being true Super Bowl contenders?
So, you know, I'm going to go with my Bills. But I also did say the Eagles. I really like the Eagles this season. I love watching Hurts. I love the addition of AJ Brown. I mean, that is a game changer for the Eagles. Terrible for the Titans, as we saw last weekend. You know, Darius Slay was on fire. Like, these guys want to bring another Super Bowl back to Philly, and I think watching Hurts being able to, you know, last year all they were saying is like he can't throw the ball. All he can do is use his legs. Like, we're watching Hurts throw the ball now, and he is doing a pretty good job. So, can he continue this upward trend over the next few weeks and continue to develop and grow into a well-rounded offense? I think they can. Yeah, absolutely.
So you're going for a Bills-Eagles Super Bowl. So are you picking the Bills in the Super Bowl over the Eagles?
Obviously. Yeah, definitely. Everyone should.
The link to the full video will be on the end of the show. Make sure that you check it out and also follow Phoebe on Twitter at Phoebe_Schecter. So let's take a look at our prediction leaderboard after week 2. Another poor week really for us all, but we still have Mr. Irrelevant bringing up the rear. So now let's take a look at our prediction for week 3. As you can see, we all got off to a fantastic start. Things can only go up from here. And we again just want to say a huge thank you to the amazing Phoebe Schecter who joined us this week, even fought through Wi-Fi battles and did the interview still in the car with us. Thank you so much. And just remember to hit that like button like Henry, spike that subscribe button like Gronk, and we'll see you this time next week.